Hello everyone and welcome back to So This Happened, the show where we dish out the most talked about stories making waves right now. I'm your host, Margaret Osazua, and I'm here to keep you in the loop with all the juicy details you need to know. So let's get into it. This is gonna be good. Martin Luther King Jr. once famously said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Now, this brings us to the heart-wrenching story shared by minors who were arrested during the nationwide End Bad Governance protest in August. These protests were sparked by widespread hardship as Nigerians have been grappling with a range of issues from economic instability to poor governance. Now, many of those detained were young minors, some as young as 13, who were held in deplorable conditions and subjected to mistreatment, all for participating or, in some cases, being accused of participating in peaceful protest. Now, after much public outcry and following an intervention by President Bola Tinubu, these minors were granted reprieve on Monday the 4th of November 2024. But what they endured while in custody raises serious questions about how the government handled the situation. For instance, 76 suspects, including 32 minors, were arraigned on charges as severe as treason, accused of trying to destabilize the country and even calling for a military coup. Now, many of these minors, who were visibly malnourished, collapsed during court proceedings, a grim reminder of the toll their mistreatment had taken on their health. Now, civil society groups and human rights activists were quick to denounce the government and police for their handling of these young detainees, many of whom came from Kano and Kaduna State. At one point, the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, had to announce an emergency briefing at the Aso Rock Villa, where it was revealed that the president had ordered their immediate release. But the minor stories, guys, are really disturbing. Now, one 15-year-old, Umar Ali, described how he had to endure days without food while in custody. He said that when they were fed, the portions were so small and inadequate that it barely sustained them. Ali even claimed he wasn't part of the protest, but was simply arrested while on his way to the market. He further explained that the conditions in their cells were so poor that they couldn't even see daylight, which likely contributed to some of the vision problems they experienced in court. Now, another minor, Ibrahim Aliyu Musa, recounted being kept in the same cell as hardened criminals, where he and others were denied proper food and subjected to inhuman treatment. Now, a 13-year-old boy who was arrested for allegedly flying a Russian flag, something he denied also, he spoke out. He shared how he was transferred to Abuja, where he was placed in a facility with adult criminals and given the same harsh treatment. In the end, after all the suffering, the minors were sent back to their families, with the Kaduna State government offering compensation in the form of 100,000 naira and mobile phones. The governor, Uba Sani, promised to rehabilitate these young people and help them become responsible citizens, though, his offer, while perhaps well-meaning, does not erase the trauma they've experienced. Now, the question for me is, what about the competence of the government in handling these minors? How could they have allowed such young individuals to be subjected to such harsh conditions, let alone accuse them of such severe crimes without proper evidence? Yes, the compensation and promises of the rehabilitation are steps in the right direction, but they feel hollow when we think about what these minors endured. Does handing them money and new phones truly address the violation of their rights? Shouldn't the government be focusing more on ensuring that such gross mistreatment never happens again? I think the bigger question here is, how can we truly have justice if such abuses are allowed to continue unchecked? I look forward to your responses in the comment section below. Quickly to the second story. Oluwa. This one is, hey God, Oluwa, Jesus, my people. The government of Equatorial Guinea has launched an investigation into a shocking scandal involving Baltasar Engonga, the Director General of the National Financial Investigation Agency, ANIF, who allegedly filmed over 400 sex tapes with various women, including wives of high-ranking officials in the country. These tapes, which surfaced online, have caused a massive stir, with the country now grappling with the fallout from what is being called one of the biggest sex scandals in its history, and possibly even in Africa. Now, in response, the government has taken swift action, ordering surveillance cameras to be installed in key government offices and courts, as well as suspending officials implicated in the scandal. Vice President Teodoro Mangwe has emphasized that any government worker caught engaging in sexual activity at work would face serious consequences, as it constitutes a blatant violation of the nation's code of conduct. Now, these decisions came after the widespread circulation of these tapes, which officials claim have denigrated the image of the country. Now, guys, let me break it down for you. The scandal exploded when authorities investigating fraud allegations against Engonga discovered the disturbing tapes during a raid of his office and home. Now, what was initially a fraud investigation has now turned into a massive public scandal, with Engonga, who is reportedly 54 years old, accused of recording sex acts with over 20 high-profile women, including the wives of government ministers, his brother's wife, his cousin, and even the sister of the country's president. In total, the tapes are said to involve dozens of women, including pregnant women and his own staff. I cannot help but say this. President General, sir. This who we call Odogunyan. What? Sir, your mind, the fear minds of the world. In fact, your audacity, finance minister, sir, is world class. Guys, when these videos hit the internet, reactions were all over the place, mine and many more. Many people were disgusted, not only by the sheer scale of the scandal, but by the fact that these women, many of whom are married to powerful men, were seemingly taken advantage of. But here's the thing. While the scandal is undeniably serious, it's important to note that none of those women involved were minors, and many reportedly knew about the cameras and consented to being filmed. So were they truly taken advantage of? No. Some people are very kinky. Don't play and do not be deceived. So it's a tricky situation. Therefore, these weren't cases of manipulation by a predator targeting vulnerable women. As for the leak itself, the timing is quite suspicious. You see, the fraud investigation is what led to the discovery of these tips, right? And that raises some interesting questions from my end. Could this entire scandal have been a tactic to deflect attention from more serious financial crimes? Or was the leak simply a byproduct of a botched investigation? The more you look into it, the more this fraud case seems to have taken a very unusual personal turn. The government's actions, suspending officials and installing surveillance cameras, are a reaction, but they don't really address the root of the problem. How did someone like Engonga, who was trusted with a sensitive role overseeing national finances, come to be involved in something so morally and ethically corrupt? Because my air is aired and my is ad. Equatorial Guinea, you real. As you wrap up the show, guys, in a shocking and brazen act of violence, a driver in Lagos set a traffic officer on fire after being accosted by operatives of the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority, LASMA, for violating traffic regulations. The harrowing incident, which took place in the Mautu area, has left one officer with serious injuries and prompted the Lagos State government to launch an urgent manhunt for the perpetrator. Now, according to the Punch, LASMA officers had stopped the driver for a traffic violation, but in a desperate attempt to avoid arrest, the driver poured petrol on his vehicle and on the officers before setting the bus ablaze. The officer who was caught in the flames sustained severe burns and was quickly rushed to a nearby hospital for treatment. Adebayo Taufik, the LASMA spokesperson, confirmed the incident and stated that efforts were underway to track down the suspect who fled the scene immediately after the attack. Guys, is this not shocking? What could have driven someone to do this? The LASMA officer was simply doing his job. He said, if we want the country to improve, guys, is this shocking or what? What could have driven someone to do this? The LASMA officer was simply doing his job. If we want this country to improve, guys, honestly, change must start with all of us. The search for the driver continues, and ensuring justice for the injured officer should be a top priority. And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and catching up with us on So This Happened. I love having you here, and we hope you had as much fun as I did with these wonderful stories. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss the latest tea. Until next time, I'm Margaret Osazua. Stay fabulous and keep spilling the tea. Bye.